Welcome to Who Knew. We are fans of the current series of Doctor Who, and here we discuss our likes, dislikes, and insights into the modern regeneration of the show. Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher, or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/WhoKnewPodcast. All our episodes are on whoknewpodcast.com. You can leave comments there, or email us at whoknewpodcast@gmail.com. We also have an Instagram and Twitter account. Tweet at us at whoknewpodcast, and find us on Facebook. Today's episode is episode 5 of season 6, The Rebel Flesh. When the Doctor finds a new form of life, can he keep them alive, or will they battle to the death with their human doppelgangers? This episode is written by Matthew Graham, directed by Julian Simpson. It originally aired on the 21st of April 2011 and was watched by 5.7 million viewers. Hi, this is Eugene. Let's introduce ourselves. Frank?
Hi, I'm a ganger. Frank's asleep.
Brian?
Hello.
Kelsey?
I have feelings. I feel pain. Hi, this is Kelsey.
Josh?
Hello.
Alburn?
Hi, this is Auburn.
Picture, if you will, an island on Earth in the 22nd century. A trio of humans in hazmat suits are in a monastery that has been converted into a factory. They open a large vat of acid, and Jennifer is concerned about the readings. Buzzer is standing over the acid, and when he makes a joke, Jennifer jostles it, causing him to lose his footing and fall into the acid. Buzzer takes it like a Brit as he dissolves into the acid, and Jimmy says he is sorry that they lost a hazmat suit. As he and Jennifer leave, they run into Buzzer in the hallway, who wonders if he can get compensation for the work-related accident. That was my best Rod Serling.
It was pretty good.
Well, with this odd opening, I think that was a good call, because this one has a very different feel to it. It's like it's not really showing us what's really wrong or what situation the Doctor's going to go into. It's just a very oddly filmed feeling for the opening.
Well, when they first open and the 3 acid suits are in shadow, I thought they were Centaurans.
Yeah.
Because of the shape of the domed helmet and the castle-like monastery, because that reminded me of the Time Warrior.
And even the staffs, like,
Yeah.
what are they for in an acid factory? Like, they don't make much sense.
By the way, Eugene, you didn't record today's episode is blah, 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 written by blah, blah, blah.
I did.
Did you?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I have no memory of that.
Those aren't your memories.
I think the staffs may have been more for reaching things. You know, they're like pikes rather than any kind of discharging weapon. So I think they had to do that in case they had to pull or grab things.
I'll let it pass.
I remember the first time I watched this, and I was super confused at what was going on, because Buzzer, when he basically dies, you don't see what his face looks like. So when he comes up again at the end of the cold open, I don't recognize that face because it's covered behind the screen or the windshield of the mask.
Yeah, they should have established him better and longer before they put their masks down.
Yeah, I agree. But I do like that it is confusing, because what is going on here? How are we going to unravel this mystery? And this whole idea of doppelgangers, like, who do you trust, I think is an interesting idea.
Yes. But I did like when, he was dissolving in acid. It was his attitude of, oh, bugger, got me out. It's like, no, sorry, we can't. Sure, I don't have legs. Oh well. It's just almost a Mighty Python-ish kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
This is an odd feeling of humor in this, seriousness. But nobody seemed to care that he was dying.
Flesh wound?
Yes.
This season is a bit of a dark spot for my viewing. And yeah, the cold open, them being so cavalier about the life, like, it's Doctor Who, but it was kind of disturbing. And then, the main title being Rebel Flesh, I was starting to get the inkling of, oh, okay, this is how it's going to go. But yeah, I don't really remember this set of episodes very well at all. So it was a pleasure to get to see it again for the first time.
Yeah, I hadn't watched this episode since it originally aired. It's like, oh, I know what happens, but watching each specific scene is like watching it new.
I really enjoyed it. I feel like I like the scope of it. It really feels like they're entering an adventure rather than having a little jaunty trip.
It did remind me of Classic Who, where the cold open is absent of the Doctor or any of the TARDIS crew, and then the Doctor and his companions they stumble upon something.
Yeah, these are my favorite type of, I guess, cold opens, or I like when episodes start this way.
I'm relating to the first time I watched it because I'm like, they're wearing suits, they should be protected.
Yeah, I guess
But
because
then-
he was in there for a while, wasn't
Yeah,
he?
and he was immersed, so that I get. But again, it's sort of confusing.
Yeah, well, you can't, like you said, you can't see the guy very well, so it takes you a minute to realize that's the same guy. And like you said, they're wearing acid-proof suits, but then he died from acid.
It's stormtrooper armor. It doesn't really do much.
Yeah, if you look at the visor, like in a pause or a freeze frame, there's visible gaps everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm sure for breathing and getting it foggy as a practical on set. But yeah, you look at it, it's just strips of plastic with big gaps.
Well, if you look later in the episode when they're wearing the acid proof suits, one of them doesn't have sleeves. Like, it's almost like they're just wearing it like as an outfit, not even like as protection. Even though they said, let's put these on for protection.
These aren't the smartest people in the world. They mine acid.
I mind acid. I don't like it very much at all.
In the TARDIS, the Doctor is focused on the scan of Amy that fluctuates between her being pregnant and not pregnant. A massive solar storm batters the TARDIS and tosses it around. Like Dorothy's house, the TARDIS is blown off course and lands on Earth, next to the monastery. They enter the building and find Buzzer, Jimmy, and two others asleep in some kind of chambers lining the walls. Suddenly, another set of Buzzer and Jimmy come in holding weapons, followed by Jen. Factory foreman Miranda, who is a duplicate of one of the women sleeping in a chamber, enters the room. After checking the Doctor's psychic paper credentials, she agrees to bring them to the government's big secret on the island. They enter a room with another vat containing a white liquid called the flesh. It's a fully programmable matter that can replicate a living organism. They use it to reproduce themselves as duplicates called gangers. These gangers can do the dangerous jobs so the humans won't get injured or killed working with the acid. If a ganger is destroyed, they just create a new one. The Doctor scans the flesh, and the flesh scans the Doctor. When he touches the liquid, a psychic connection is created.
It's interesting how many versions of stories are like The Matrix. You know, in other television shows and movies, there's a lot of versions of the body being safe and you having an avatar, basically.
Yeah.
Like that movie Avatar.
But before we do that, let's hit the really important stuff. Was that a White Stripes song on the TARDIS?
They're using a lot of pop music in this episode.
Yeah. I just, at the creepiness of the cold open, it felt different already. And then you enter the TARDIS and they've got music playing in the console room and they're playing darts.
Oh yeah.
Which I liked, but I don't know. It's just, it sets this entire episode up for me as there's something off.
Yeah. But I like it though.
I liked that.
Yeah, I like how, when they're playing darts and they have our music playing, it gives you a sense of what life is like on the TARDIS, which we don't get to see much. They talk about it, but we don't get to see much of it. But you're right. There's does Julian Simpson, is that a he or a she?
That is a he.
Has he directed many episodes? Because I'm curious if he hasn't, and this is sort of a new vibe he's bringing, or if it was a directorial choice or producerial choice to kind of give this episode, or probably going to be the two-parter episode arc, a different vibe.
So he directed Day of the Moon, Curse of the Black Spot, The Rebel Flesh, and The Almost People.
Oh, wow.
I wish they would have shown another part of the TARDIS. I mean, they should have used the rec room or the library or the tennis courts or whatever else is in there to show us a little bit more. And then, but I know that they needed the Doctor to be scanning Amy to find out that she's a little bit pregnant. I never thought they would ever use that phrase in a TV show like this.
There is a sitcom element to the show a bit, where we're just always in the main TARDIS room, and we talk about, you never see the bedrooms of other people's rooms and some sitcoms and stuff, but they're always coming in and out.
If the TARDIS was that large, you wouldn't bring the dartboard.
Yes,
That's a good point.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, they always talk about the swimming pool. We never see it, so
Yeah.
missed
What do you do with the
opportunity.
fourth Doctor?
Was this the first appearance of the dartboard?
Yes.
Was this the only appearance of the dartboard?
Yes.
Oh. As I'm sure I've mentioned this before, Kelsey and I have been rewatching Deep Space Nine, and so seeing them playing darts in space just warmed my heart a little bit.
I thought that the post-production effects on the TARDIS monitor of Amy being pregnant it kind of racks focus from Amy and Rory in the background and then the doctor in the foreground where he's at the console. It looked very superimposed on the monitor. And even when they go to the close-up and he turns the dial, I don't know, maybe it's just the way HD is now. It just stuck out to me on this rewatch.
You have
Yeah, I
to look
didn't
at it
notice that.
again. I thought all the effects in this episode were really great.
They had a nice comic bit when they had crash positions.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was
So Amy
so
runs to the
funny.
chair and Rory's like, "What does that mean?"
Sorry, I just found out that it's not the White Stripes, it's Muse, and the title of the song is Supermassive Black Hole.
I remember Muse. Before they leave the TARDIS, and I don't remember where this happened. But did you catch the conversation that the Doctor has with Rory really quickly, and it's kind of like a reference to the Doctor's wife, where like the TARDIS is taking them somewhere, and Rory's like, or can you guys,
You don't have a
Brain, do you know
clue.
what I'm talking about?
Yeah, you don't have a clue where we are, and I think he even says we're on an adventure. So it did make me think of the Doctor's wife, and I always take you where you need to be.
The Doctor didn't want to take Amy and Rory along on this adventure. He wanted to drop them off for fish and chips.
Right. I like how they're just playing darts and then he goes, anyone for fish and chips? Rory just like raising his hand, me?
Yeah, I don't think he's trying to get rid of Amy and Rory. He wants fish and chips. It's like, we're going to go get fish and chips, and then they get, like Dorothy's house, knocked off course.
But I saw it differently. I saw the doctor sees it's because he's reacting, in my mind, to the pregnancy indication, and he wants to go find out about that. So he doesn't know what's going to happen to him. He's going to drop off Rory and Amy to protect them and go find out why her scan is coming back this way, because the solar storm hasn't happened yet. And Amy can see through it, going, "No, I'm going to go with you wherever you're going." And he wants to get rid of them because it's also like, I can't tell Amy she's, partly pregnant at this point because I don't know what that means.
I learned in health class you can't be partly pregnant.
Either way, I really love the exterior as soon as they get out of the TARDIS of the castle wall, and the TARDIS like is right there and the camera's above everything. Were they on a location, Eugene? Do you know?
Yes.
Like, I assume some of the other castle was CGI, but man, just right outside that wall looked good.
It
Yeah,
seems like they were on location on a lot of the interiors too.
Yes, they were. They were at a Cardiff castle. That's just what they said. But I liked how it's a Dutch angle when you see the TARDIS in the extreme foreground, and then the Doctor, Amy, and Rory in like a middle ground, and then the steps to the opening in the wall in the sort of background. I just like how you can read police box at a Dutch angle, and then it's like, oh, visually something's gonna go wrong.
Yeah, it goes back to that everything's kind of off kilter.
Yeah.
With the whole episode, but in a good way. Well, we'll see.
We'll see. Yes, we'll see. Some nice CG work was when they were examining the hole in the ground with the pipe. That thing that said like caution or danger, that was added.
Was it? I was wondering about that because it looked really good, but something about it to me said like, I wonder if that's actually written on there, because it also says corrosive on it, and then he says corrosive, and I'm like, why would? If it says it on there, why would he have said that? And then when they go back to it,
Yeah.
For the kids who can't read that big word.
Exactly.
Except Dusty Springfield, because who isn't a massive fan?
Yeah, who isn't? That's something that comes into play later, though, right?
Sort of.
It sounded like foreshadowing to me, like it was going to mean something later.
The human Jennifer returns to one of the cloning chambers along the wall. A tub in the room fills with the liquid flesh, and a ganger Jen is produced. The Doctor warns them that a second, larger solar storm is going to hit the factory and that they should leave, but Miranda says they survived the first one and will survive the next one as well. The Doctor, Amy, and Rory go to the factory's monitoring station to prepare it for a huge power surge about to come. As the storm hits, the Doctor runs outside to divert the power and is knocked unconscious. The power surges through the sleeping crew, the gangers, the vat of flesh, and Amy and Rory. Some of the pipes crack and spill acid throughout the building. When everyone awakes, the factory is completely without power and the humans have lost their connection to the gangers. They are turning back into liquid flesh. Well, almost. The power surge enhanced them. They are now roaming free, newly alive.
Ooh.
I thought the effects were the way they were when the lightning was striking, the way they were blinking back and forth between being gangers and humans, that they didn't use some crazy special effect to do it. It just popped.
Mhm.
I liked it. I liked how simple it was.
Yeah,
It made
I
it
agree
almost
with that.
even more creepy.
Yeah, that was a nice, simple effect, like you said. It really worked to tell you what's going on.
Now that you brought that up, a little bit later, Jennifer has an effect where her face
Yeah, it
changes
just
briefly.
pops.
Like, how do you compare those two? Because the second one was more like CG just to get it to match, where this one is all editorial.
It seemed to me that nothing on their body moved except their faces in that moment. So I could see easily you could do it with flashes and then you just switch out the frames, but I don't think that's what happened. So I think they used whatever the effect was. I think they used it in the same places twice. And then I started to wonder what you're saying, and then I was like, I don't care, I liked it. So I was like, I didn't bother trying to figure it out because it could have been, it was either one way or the other.
I just really liked it in that first part that you mentioned, but the next one in the mirror was just something was off about it. That was all. Like it was too brief, or
I think
too something. It was missing something.
It didn't seem real because it was a pop. Maybe it was supposed to harken back to that first shot. I don't know, but you know, I agree. You know, and with the way that some shows are made, sometimes it's like they try something, it doesn't work. We don't have time to do another take.
Well, and this episode is very ambitious. Like I'm just looking behind you right now, and there's some crazy. We're seeing the aftermath of some crazy effects that come a little bit later.
Yeah,
again, Jennifer.
I will say, the head and all that stuff that didn't look so hot. Her face did. Like it's a little mixed bag, but I do think overall this is around the time of the production where the whole show is a series. The special effects started to get better and better because just the technology got better to be more seamless and compositing.
Well, and you don't get to that point unless you push through some really bad looking.
You have to try.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Auburn, I just watched back the scene where the lightning storm happened, and you're right. Like when they switch this back and forth between the people and the gangers, it is all editorial,
like jump
cutting.
Black
Yeah.
But for me, there's a lot of little flashbacks, homages, Easter eggs that I don't know if they were intentional. And one of them was when the Jennifer doppelganger was coming out of the water. It reminded me so much of Lady Cassandra, you know, with the skin, with her eyes, and in the mouth. And it's like that just came right to my mind. Also, he was climbing the tower up to the weather vane.
Frank, back to what you're talking about when the ganger Jen arises from the vat. It reminded me of the clone Martha from the Centauran stratagem in season 4.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, I thought you were going to say that, and then you went another way. So I was like, it's two things.
I forgot about the doppelganger of Martha. Oh, wow. I also thought about Vampires of Venice when he was climbing the tower.
I did too.
That's what the off-switch was in Venice. And then the Martha episode where she and the doctor was in the tux going to the rejuvenation.
Lazarus experiment.
Lazarus, yes. I couldn't remember, sorry. When Jennifer's head's coming through the door. That just popped into my head, going back to that one. So like I said, I don't know if this was intentional, but there just seemed to be a lot of little Easter eggs or references.
With the gangers, I don't think they would have had the ability to stretch out like that.
Yeah,
if they were unstable, they were still human. They were fluctuating between flesh and human, so they would either be a vat of liquid or a human. They wouldn't be Elastic Man.
Yeah, I think it's a stretch of just the imagination.
A stretch.
They were going for. Yeah.
Maybe they were going for something more like Deep Space Nine, Odo, and what's his race? The
Changelings.
The Changelings.
Founders.
The Founders.
Spoilers.
Yeah. Okay.
And I would have been fine with that if they had used it again. They only use it this one time, and later on, it's like, it would be nice if you had your stretchy power right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
with
agree with
everybody.
both because I do think that was what their intention was, because they said they could be transformed into anything. So they're still in that transformative state. But they didn't show it right. They didn't use it right. They didn't use it again because they were fighting because they were saying they're human. They're the
Yeah.
human counterparts. So mentally they were already locked into that.
Yeah.
So I don't think they should have done that part of it because it's not consistent with its own story at this point.
Speaking of visual effects, when the Doctor is climbing the castle tower antenna, it's obvious to me that is a green or blue screen. There's just something about the way that the solar tsunami hits them that doesn't. It looks too fake. I mean, it looks good on its own, but then once you put a human next to it, there's something about it that didn't hit me the way it was meant to.
I think it was meant to be surreal. Like it was beyond reality. It was definitely like the clouds moving and all the rays of light going way too fast. But it reminds me of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Every blood moon, the monsters respawn and the sky turns red, just like that.
But I mean, it looked great until you put Matt Smith up against it, because I liked the way it looked against just the monastery.
Well, what happens is a lot of times with special effects in the sky and things like that is everything's in focus. So if he's in focus in the foreground and then the background is in focus and the camera's obviously closer to him than there, and that's what makes things not look real. Like there's a balance between it.
Story-wise, you've got this big storm coming. There's an alarm that goes off, warning of the storm. Shouldn't the humans wake up? They stayed in the chambers the whole time. I was like, no, wake up. I would have thought that would have been protocol 1.
I don't know, maybe they were programmed to a certain extent. Like it was programmed for them to be asleep and not wake up until a certain time. Who knows?
That's a good point, Brian, because they need to be able to get up if something catastrophic is coming. But it could be that Miranda said, we'll survive it. She wasn't worried about it. She didn't think it was that big. So she told everybody, stay in.
Well, and it's so easy for the viewers to forget that the ganger version of our cast aren't the real versions, so we still stay emotionally connected to them because they look real, even though we might know that they aren't the real people. They should have took in their gangers to protect the real bodies from anything that might have happened, debris or anything. But instead, they all went to shelter, didn't they?
I don't know. Everything up until the storm is very quickly executed, performed. It's very hard to keep up.
I will say I was also struck by how rudimentary looking the harness is when they are asleep in that thing. It's basically it's barely got any mechanics to it. They're fully open. There's nothing protecting them at all, even from falling over.
But Jennifer, she played it well when she hooked up to the harness.
Really? Because I noticed that on the harness there's a place to put your hand like this.
Or her hand wasn't that big.
And I don't think any of the fingers lined up. She keeps her hand closed together. So that's funny, Albert. I didn't think the actor did a good job at all.
Well, I wasn't worried about the hand acting. I was worried about the emotional acting in the scene.
Once I noticed that there's no way anyone's fingers could have fit in that, I figured, well, I guess it's just a symbolic thing on the machine saying like put hand here.
It's more of a suggestion.
Yes.
Real quick, the time of year that they were filming this was very cold. When the humans are in the room where they're asleep in the harnesses, I think it was Jimmy or Buzzer. He's by a window, so he's just wearing the jumpsuit, and then the breeze comes through, and he was freezing.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of scenes where you see their breath throughout the whole episode.
Are they filming in an actual monastery?
Cardiff Castle. And then in the beginning, the cold open scene, when the vat of acid, like the steam or condensation rising, you think it's hot, but it was actually super cold when Buzzer fell into it.
Oh, that's funny. Well, lucky for the camera. Bad for the actor. Hope he got workers' comp for that.
During the solar tsunami itself, when the lightning bolt was going through all the flesh containers, like I think on purpose, it was very much like Frankenstein's monster, like that lightning coming to life, and I enjoyed that. That let me know where the story was going, as someone who didn't know the story very well. Like I was like, oh, I see what trope they're playing. So I like that part of it.
Watching it again now, there's subtle foreshadowing for what comes later, but you would never know when you were watching the episode for the first time. So we're not going to discuss that.
Well, I can't discuss it because I don't remember the next 2 episodes. That's news to me. Like, even when this ended, I was like, oh, it's a 2-parter? I'm like Josh, I don't remember anything about, except I did have a visceral reaction and I saw that this was the next one we were going to watch. So
when you're talking about that, Brian, are you meaning like the first?
I didn't want to discuss it. I wanted to move on.
All right, let's move on.
I just wanted to say one line and then start reading. The gangers realize that they have all the memories and feelings of their originals. Rory follows Jennifer, who goes to the bathroom because she is feeling sick. She throws up flesh and runs into a stall. She punches a hole through the stall door and hits Rory. Then her head and neck snake out towards him, demanding that they let the gangers live, and Rory quickly runs away. The doctor microwaves some food and hands the plate to Miranda. She says she's not hungry, but doesn't realize that the plate is hot until the doctor mentions it. She is a ganger, but the flesh hasn't stabilized. She is fluctuating between being an exact copy and a half-formed creamy white ganger. She screams that they are alive and runs out of the room. Amy is worried that Rory hasn't returned.
Always with the Rory.
I thought it was a great moment when the doctor gives Miranda the hot plate. I was like, that's a great doctor moment for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes, that was a great doctor moment because he also, right before that, said, I told you they were, disoriented. And he was talking to her because she goes, I said it was only a minute that we were asleep, not an hour. Because, I told you they were disoriented, meaning that he already knows. He just needs proof. So I like that line. But what bugged me about it was earlier, Jennifer said if the gangers are going to die, their nerve endings shut down so they don't feel the pain. Like car air, what do they call us?
Airbag.
That's it. Yes. And when the Jennifer ganger was saying how much it hurt when the electricity went through them, because she was like surprised what pain was. She was like, that hurt. She understood what hurt was, and was she was telling Rory about that. And so their nerves are working. She felt the pain, but Miranda's weren't, I guess, and that just kind of threw me off. Going, she didn't feel the heat of the plate. And was it just because they're going back and forth?
Yeah, she's fluctuating. But I think Miranda felt the electricity of the lightning bolt, and then after that woke up their nerves. But once the lightning bolt went away, the after effects was all over the place.
And Jennifer's awakening seems to be a little different than some of the
that's
others,
what I was going to say. There's something
for whatever reason.
Well, she's more self-examining, and whereas the other one didn't quite even realize it was happening. Whereas Jennifer seems to be examining her own experience.
Yeah, real quick, back to when the ganger Jennifer is activated. I saw a little bit of like contact lenses in her eyes that kind of shimmered, and it reminded me of the Star Trek episode where No Man Has Gone Before, where they put those primitive contact lenses in their eyes. And I was like, oh, that's nice. It's just another visual cue to see that these people are different before it goes into that editing that we've been mentioning, and the makeup. So we mentioned the bathroom scene with the ganger Jen. They talked about that in the commentary, where they said that it looked not as good as they wanted it to, but with the test audiences, the kids screamed at it, so they kept it.
And if it was a number of years ago, that would have been state of the art. So it's not like it was terrible. It was just we're so sophisticated now with what we expect and see that pales in comparison.
Yeah, because when I watched it, I was like, ooh, that's bad. Could they have gotten better rendering or something? But then at the same time, I thought it gives me a reaction, so it does its job.
Yeah.
And then in the commentary, it's Buzzer, Jimmy, and the director, Julian Simpson, and they said, they wanted to leave that in because it reminded them when they were kids watching Doctor Who that something would come out and like shock them.
Yeah, I just I appreciate the storyline of Jennifer and Rory. How like Jennifer or Rory reaches out to Jennifer reaches out to Rory, but like because we see him acting as we're used to seeing a lot of our companions act. That
would have been Rose. It's
a very like Rose moment. He's connecting with this person, non-person that, you know, he met, and he wants to help her, and he, you know, he cares deeply what happens to her.
Yeah, one great interaction between the ganger Jen and Rory is that Jennifer goes, "I thought I was going to die," and Rory replies with, "Welcome to my world."
It'll stick one of these times. I liked it when Rory hugs Jennifer for the first time and he looks over at Amy and Amy is like, "No, this is fine. I'm okay with it. I know what it means." And then later on in the episode, Amy was like, "All right, stop."
But I think it does remind us about Rory is a nurse, and this makes him a good nurse.
Oh, that's right.
He sees his needs,
Rory's being a
help,
nurse,
and trying to figure out how to help and understanding for what the person's going through. So I think that's part of his character that I really like.
You know, I do feel Amy is more concerned with Rory than jealous, and I like seeing her concerned about Rory, because for her progression of the character is early on, she never even really thought about him much, and then this is a point in their story together where now you see he is important.
Yeah, and then back to Rory being a companion, he does mention that the rule 1 with the doctor is don't wander off to Jennifer, and then that was mentioned in The Girl in the Fireplace, The Empty Child, and The 11th Hour.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Coming up in the next part we're talking about, there's a line where they ask the doctor, you know, "Do you know about the flesh? You said this was early technology of the flesh.
Yeah.
So you know something about it."
One of the workers says that, right?
Yeah, Dickon.
Yeah.
I think it's with them. You know, so I had totally forgotten about Martha, because that could be a reference to Martha's ganger in the Centauran stratagem, or it's a foreshadowing of what's coming up. So I'm not sure if it's both, it was one or the other. I think that also goes back to him wanting to get them off the ship, because he's going to go somewhere before the solar storm hits. And I think that's where he was going. You can see like that was his plan. He knows about the flesh, and that clicked in at one point.
Rory's trying to get back to the group, but acid pools blocks his path, and ganger Jen is following him. The doctor, Amy, and Jimmy go to the ladies' room and see the hole in the door. The doctor goes to get the TARDIS while Amy continues to look for Rory. Buzzer and Dickon search for more hazmat suits, but find that the gangers had taken them all. Rory finds ganger Jen reminiscing about her childhood. She is Jennifer and has the right to live as much as the other Jen. She begs Rory to help her. Ganger Miranda regroups with the other gangers to prepare for battle. I really enjoyed the moment that Rory has with ganger Jen, not only for the what do you call it, emotional and moral implications of what is it to be alive, but also the way that the makeup looks on her, I think is done well. It's subtle and it's not like overdone. And then when she turns around and like beats her chest saying, "I am me," and then it like the color comes back to her face, I thought that was really powerful and fit with like, it was visually complementary to what was going on story-wise.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think during the story, I wanted more of those scenes. You know, I wanted more in depth about who they are. But I thought it was really well written, because she keeps saying, "I'm Jennifer. I know everything about her life."
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, you say my life if you really thought you were Jennifer. I mean, they've done this on Star Trek, you know, with Will Riker and Tom Riker, and they realize that they're now separate, but they used to have the same past. Tuvik's episode, that feeling of I have the right to be alive, is what got me with this one. I think that had a good correlation.
I wouldn't be surprised though if that's on purpose, because just in the following scenes to come, she turns quite quickly, which makes me think that she's genuine in everything she's saying to Rory, but she still sees herself as a different entity, because as soon as things start to not work out for them in the following scenes, she turns on a dime and she practically becomes the leader. So I kind of feel like when she's talking with them in the scene that you're talking about, she's sort of unaware that she's sort of doing herself an injustice by not saying me, by saying her, because in her mind there is a separation.
Think, Josh, if someone just said, "Well, you're a ganger and you're not the real Josh," and you go, "Wait a minute, I was born yesterday." It's like, that's not something you can really process in a while, but then you know that's the truth. But I liked that aspect, that she's doing both. She's trying to be who she remembers herself as being, and then who she recognizes herself to be now.
Yeah.
I like that they're both going on at the same time.
It's a great emotional dichotomy that goes on. That it's funny that the heart of this episode doesn't really involve the doctor or the companions of him. I mean, I guess it does Rory, but just this whole question of, you know, who are we, and if we were able world to be someone else, what would that do to us if we found out, just like you just said, if we found out we weren't who we thought we were, or there's a number of course, other shows and movies that deal with that as well. Like what that does to you, and
I actually like the fact that they didn't go very far into that the gangers always knew they were gangers, because it eliminates a lot of the, no, I'm the person, 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 no, I'm the person. And that would have gotten old really quick. It's like they always knew that they were the copies, but they were saying that doesn't matter. We have everything that makes us special and alive, so deal with it. And I liked that.
Yeah, and that separation in the dialogue helps me feel better about a part of dialogue that comes later when Rory and Jennifer are walking through the monastery, and he's trying to reassure the ganger that the doctor's going to help, and he says the doctor wants to help Jennifer, and that kind of bothered me because I was like, oh wait, what? Like, he didn't say the doctor wants to help you, Jennifer, but knowing that the ganger character herself is making a separation between Jennifer and the ganger Jennifer, who she is, like, helps me feel okay about Rory lying, because at first it really bothered me.
Back to that idea of like who is who. This episode reminded me of like other sci-fi things, like The Thing, like who is really the thing amongst these people. Like, not that this is happening here, but it just reminded me of like, we don't know who's who. But I'm glad that, like Brian mentioned, that the gangers know who they are. And then like Blade Runner, how they send manufactured humans to do all the hard work off planet. And then there's another one called Never Let Me Go. It's got Keira Knightley, Carey Mulligan, and Andrew Garfield. And they are like put off into maybe like an orphanage for harvesting their organs for their actual people.
In the island?
Oh, that's what that movie's about?
Yeah.
Spoilers.
But they don't know it, because they're kind of kept in the dark. And then the island is the more obvious one. So I kind of just thought about all these things while we were talking about that, I guess, dilemma of identity.
But playing off what you said, Eugene, about identity, I think it goes to show the strength of the story that, you have the same story playing out from, the 50s, 60s, Philip K. Dick, old school sci-fi, to even today, like Westworld. Picard has like these same stories kind of interwoven throughout of identity. Who am I? Like, who do I choose to be? Just a great play to that sci-fi world.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning, they were just avatars and tools. The consciousness of the person, the human, was in the ganger.
Yes.
They were just an avatar, kind of like you're playing a video game. That's your person, and that person dies. You just get a new one and play again.
Right. It was the storm.
So it was the electricity and form that transferred that consciousness or duplicated it into the
other. Yeah, because that's why the original humans are kind of sleeping, because their consciousness is in the ganger.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that is how they were driven. But one of the doctor's lines before the big storm hits is that they've been pouring all that psychic energy into the flesh. So I don't think they were sentient, but some of that, the precursors for that was their actions of constantly using these gangers.
Right. Kind of like when you, like a hacker would say, like, well, you never really delete anything off a hard drive.
Yeah. So it's kind of like residue memory.
Yeah.
Like you could sense a person's energy in a room. It's energy. We're all made of energy. Everything's made of energy. So if energy is given to something else enough, it's just it's residual.
Yeah. What's the science thing about that? Energy is never destroyed. It's just converted.
Matter can never be destroyed. It can
That's
never
it.
be
Changed. Yeah.
E equals MC squared.
Is that?
That's
I
the
equal
formula.
what? I equal what? What are you saying?
Oh, I want to sneeze.
Speaking of that, why is Dickens sneezing all the time? What was that supposed to indicate?
Well, I'm sure we'll find out in the next episode. Because it's gonna be we're gonna be with the doppelganger, and one of them's gonna sneeze, and the other one's not, and then we're gonna know who's who.
That did help me know that he was sneezy. There was Buzzer, the one guy, and Sneezy.
Yeah, and sleeping.
There was Buzzer, Sneezy, and Jimmy.
Denny, and then there's the one that doesn't match, Miranda.
I'm sorry. Did all that happen because I said I was about to sneeze? Anyway.
Yeah, it did.
Okay. Amy is still searching for Rory when she sees the eye patch woman in a wall before the opening closes. Rory and Ganger Jen find her, and Jimmy and Dickon arrive. Rory protects Ganger Jen as they all head back to the common room. The Doctor finds the TARDIS entrenched in acid-soaked ground. He returns to the monastery and finds the other gangers, who he brings to the common area. Miranda secretly watches, then leaves to gather some things from her locker. The Doctor tells the originals and gangers that the storm has given the gangers life. He wants to find Jennifer and Miranda and get them all away from this place. Miranda enters, brandishing a circuit breaker that shoots 40,000 volts. Ganger Buzz attacks Miranda, but she fires the weapon, killing him. Rory jumps Miranda and disables the device while the other gangers flee.
When we go to the room, I think it's the room with the vat, and the three male gangers are there, and then Miranda comes in, and then they have the suits. That set was reused, was the same set from the Oval Office in The Impossible Astronaut.
Oh,
wow.
They said that in the commentary that where the steps were, where she goes down, is where the desk for the president would have been.
Wow. It's a cool set. It's nice that they come down into it.
Yeah.
Did you notice there's one point where they're all standing on their, they're all like facing each other down, and the Doctor's in between them, and Rory is holding Jen's hand, and
Yeah.
at one point the Doctor is saying something and it's really a tense moment, and you just see behind Rory is like, ow, 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 ow.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't call attention to it, but it's just in the background is like, you're squeezing my hand too hard. I like that
Yeah.
they didn't call attention to it.
There's also, speaking of things I don't call attention to, there is a little argument Amy and Rory have in the background where he says something about it's not like that, where he's basically saying, about
Ganger Jen.
about Ganger Jen, and it's not like they're obviously talking about a jealousy issue, but not making an issue out of it. But again, it's like in the background, you barely hear him say it.
Oh yeah, the little argument.
Yeah.
If we're on things that are in the background.
Hold on, that's interesting that you thought that was about jealousy. I thought it was more about Amy's like, Ganger Jen is a bad person.
It could be that too. I could be putting my own personal history in my interpretation.
Well, continuing the trend of things that go by way too quickly, as the TARDIS is being melted and the Doctor runs to it, his shoes get melted.
Right.
Yeah, which I didn't catch because I didn't see that his shoes melt, but then later he mentions that he needs a pair of shoes, so I was just like, oh, I guess they melted in the end.
Both the shoes melting and his new shoes just go by very quick.
And I'm sure that's going to come into play with which is the real Doctor, and then they look at his feet because when the Flesh copied the Doctor, he had his old shoes. It's all good. It's all good storytelling.
Do you write for the show, Josh?
No, I just watch a lot of TV and movies.
The scene where they're all meeting together in the dining room, the common area, I thought, moved me, because it also reminded me of in Cold Blood after the Hungry Earth, when he's trying to bring the Silurians and humans together and have that discussion. So he's trying to do the same thing here, and it's working.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
The one guy goes awkward, I got to fix this, and his ganger says, "Can I help you? Let's do this together."
Yeah.
So it's like everything's working, and then Miranda comes in and just throws the wrench into it.
Yeah, when she kills, is it Buzzer?
Buster?
Not Sneezy.
Phil Collins?
Buzzer.
But when Miranda kills him, the Doctor's anger in this moment is justified, where before in like The Beast Below, we didn't like that, where he goes, "You stopped his heart. He had a heart." I was like, wow, that's good. That was well earned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And even later, he like kind of mumbles under his breath, like, we were about to have this solved and you had to go and kill one of them and it ruined everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Beast Below just kind of came out of nowhere. This seemed a lot more earned, like you said. And I think it shows why they're so much willing to go to war. If they're copies of Miranda and they're copies of the people, those people are not the most, let's try and work together with other people. They are combative.
Yeah, I did like how both Mirandas were very strategic in their thinking. Like they tried to come up with a battle plan or a strategy right away on how to solve this problem.
And even the fella, he's wearing his wedding ring around his neck, that their counterpart had the same personality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's why when Dickon and Ganger Dickon were so quick to work together, it didn't bother me because they knew, they were like, we're on the same page here. I
Right,
know that
right.
your motives are pure because my motives would be pure. And then same thing with Miranda and Ganger Miranda. Ganger Miranda wasn't upset necessarily that Miranda had just shot Buzzer. She's like, yeah, that's what I would do. Like,
Right.
I get it. Like,
And
I
she
understand.
also knows that Miranda's not going to give up.
Right.
You know, there's no convincing in this moment because she's aware that she won't be convinced.
But I also think it's part of the whole human nature. They know they will be killed because they know they would kill the other ones. So it is a matter of life and death. The self-preservation, I think, can make you do a lot of different things. And I think Ganger Jen is definitely feeling that. She knows Miranda and she knows what they would do. And it's like, it's us or them. That whole mentality both sides have. It is going to be us or them.
It was also Jen in the beginning who kind of knocked Buzzer into the vat and said that she didn't.
She did. Liar.
So it totally did.
Yeah. So I didn't touch you, and I'm like, no, I thought you did. So even that I think is a little bit of foreshadowing.
The us and them line was great because the humans, Miranda said it, and then the gangers, it was Jennifer who said it on that
Right.
side. Yeah, that was really a good pivot.
I agree.
Miranda and her crew decide it is war, while the gangers don the hazmat suits and agree it's us or them. The jets and the sharks are going to rumble. Still roaming the monastery, Jennifer comes upon another unseen ganger and runs from him. The doctor warns Miranda that since she killed one of them, the gangers will be back. She says the chapel is the most defensible room in the monastery. They all go there, but Rory hears Jen scream and leaves to find her. The others barricade themselves in the chapel and find that the other unknown ganger trapped with them, a ganger of the doctor.
When Jennifer is roaming the monastery, does she have a limp? Is she
Yes. Yeah.
limping?
Yes.
Is that an injury or does the human Jennifer have a limp?
That's for Josh. This is a way you can tell the human one. She's limping.
Right.
She hurt herself.
Ah.
In the story.
I think it's basically like she got hurt off screen, like wherever, that's where she's been, or maybe the ganger did hurt her and lock her up somewhere and she got out. Like, but it's subtle, but it's there.
But we see human Jennifer limping around, and then there's the one shot where she like walks through a tunnel and the camera pans up to show us Ganger Jen is on her trail. Yeah. And then to be continued.
That was a really cool
Spider
effect.
Jen.
Really old school
Old
effect,
school.
but it works really
yeah.
great.
Well, okay, she's walking through and then the camera pans up and then they insert a shot that is done where the actress is on the floor like she's hanging on the ceiling, and then they just edit that in. So I'm just explaining that. But what happens with that is that the hair is gravity is working on the hair, so it's on the ceiling part. And then they were like, if that was actually done correctly, or physically, then her hair would be hanging. But then at the same time, it's like her hair is now fluid. It's flesh stuff.
I thought the same thing, but I thought it was creepy as hell. So it's something that looks right because we know what's happening, but it looks wrong at the same time, and that's so unsettling.
And I think that's why that works, is because there's something wrong about it, but we don't know right away.
Right.
A fun fact, in my line of work, I often do reverses on the way that people look because I'm cutting to make like a story happen. And so somebody looks at one thing, then looks to somebody else. So oftentimes I only get a choice of them looking one direction. So I have to reverse it to get them looking the other direction. And hair is finicky.
Yeah.
Hair moves in a funny way that when you whip your head, like it does look funny, but usually my shots are up for like less than 2 seconds. So
from an animator's perspective, what actually happens is when you go to move, you always start a move quicker because it moves fast, and your body actually slows down to stop, or it'll overshoot and settle. So it's not like the same speed and all that stuff. It's a matter of, it's very subtle, but if you were to move your hands suddenly, the beginning of the motion is much quicker than it's stopping, or sometimes vice versa. Like you'll slow into something and then it'll stop suddenly. There's all these little micro things that happen with physics that as an animator you study, but when you do what you're talking about, Auburn, like you just can't fake that.
But now that you've said that, I think the next time I do go to fake it, my strategy for retiming it might be a little different. Instead of doing a flat -100, I can bend the curve a little to make it more natural.
Yep.
There you go.
All right, thanks, Josh.
You're welcome.
As long as you don't flatten it.
Yeah.
Wait, we
No,
want
we
to
want
flatten
to
the
flatten
curve.
it. Yeah.
Keeping it topical. When the doctor goes into the ladies' room and looks at the mirror, to me that says that there was just something about that scene that I was like, pay attention to this.
The sequence of going to the bathroom with Ganger, Jennifer, and Rory, and the breaking the mirror and then discovering the mirror later, something did feel off to me about it. And then Eugene, just hearing you're like also feeling that there was something off about like the doctor's reaction almost makes me feel like maybe it was written a little bit differently and then redone in post to make it flow a different way. Cause there is something that's like not quite right.
Now that you mention it, I feel like they're kind of talking about something that we didn't get a full explanation of.
Yeah.
Maybe. Like they were able to figure out what happened with Rory and the head coming out of the thing without, like, I remember thinking, how do they know that? Like they seem to understand what happened in that room when no one, way after the fact. So maybe you're right.
And also talking about, you mentioned that the VFX was maybe not working earlier. Maybe they had like a backup plan in case it didn't work and then kind of did half of each.
Like a head on a stick.
Yeah, or like a way to story around it. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
If they knew they weren't going to get that. But yeah, it's interesting that there was some confusion around that.
Eugene, do you have anything to mention the actors, the guest stars?
Do you want me to do that now? Because I do.
Yeah. Whenever, if you want. That's why I bring it up.
Before you get to that, I wanted to say real quick, did you notice that when Rory is going to search for Jen and the doctor is trying to get him into the chapel, he says Rory Pond?
No, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, that's all.
So I'm going to go through the cast. Mark Bonner plays Jimmy. He's Scottish, and he has been in Humans, and he plays Neil. And he's done a lot of UK TV shows.
The most recent thing I've seen him on was Catastrophe on Amazon Prime, who I thought he was a lot shorter, because I think Rob Delaney, the star of Catastrophe, is probably like well over 6 feet.
Yeah.
Because I pictured this fella to be like my height. He seems tall. He seems taller than everybody. He was great. He's great in this.
Oh, yeah. I love it when both him and the Ganger are working together, like we mentioned. There's something about that.
See, he's got a real presence. He's got real intense, soulful eyes.
Marshall Lancaster plays Buzzer. He has been on Life on Mars as Chris Skelton, which also had John Sim, as, the Master, and he's also done a lot of UK TV shows. Sarah Smart plays Jennifer. She has been in Wallander as Anne Britt Hogland, and she's done a lot of UK TV shows as well. Raquel Cassidy plays Miranda Cleaves. She's been in Downton Abbey as Miss Baxter. She was in Uncle as Teresa, the love interest in season 2. And Uncle also has Daisy Hagrid, who was Sophie from The Lodger. Leon Vickers plays Dickon, and he hasn't done very much. And then Frances Barber plays the Eye Patch Lady, and this is the third time we've seen her.
Everybody's very good.
Another connection, but this is not the cast, this is the writer. Matthew Graham, who wrote this episode, is also the co-creator of Life on Mars. So that's why he casted Marshall Lancaster, or had Marshall Lancaster come on to this episode. And he has done other Doctor Who. The first one he did was Fear Her, and then he will be the writer of the second part of this story.
Speaking of the cast of this crew, is it just me, or does Doctor Who have a specific look and type whenever they bring on an ensemble crew like this? I feel like most times the person in charge or the captain is a female brunette, and then there's like another female, and then there's like 2 or 3 men.
Although they're not always brunettes, though.
And then Waters of Mars, she was blonde. Adelaide Brooke.
Yeah. I think there's always been a very female positive agenda with the show, obviously coming up to where we are now in 2020, that they did it every chance they could, and that is one place that they were able to do it relatively often.
The doctor made a joke about the North earlier in the. Does anyone else know the cultural?
Things that
What's
were said in this that went
Can you
over my
give us
head.
more?
Uh,
I thought it was Scottish. I thought he was
Yeah.
kind of.
oh yeah, is that Scotland's of course in the north?
Well, that's
of
how the Scots
yeah.
talk.
It also might be because these are like it's known for like a working class, so maybe that's what this is referring to. Like these guys are doing a job.
Like the
Mhm.
Starks.
Yeah.
Again, I know I mentioned a little bit earlier the way this episode was shot. Where things are shot now with Jodie Whittaker's seasons, they started to use anamorphic lenses. This felt the same without being as cinematic, but it definitely had the feeling of more of a cinematic B movie that you'd see. That wasn't like a theatrical movie that wasn't shot with anamorphic lenses. It definitely, I really liked the scope of it. It felt like we were inside it took us to another place rather than just presented us a story on a soundstage.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought the lighting was really good.
Filming on location.
Yeah, filming location and the lighting that they used, I thought gave us such a
Yeah.
great feeling for what they wanted.
And I think the makeup was great.
Yeah, when I mentioned like Ganger Jen when she was looking at that photo and reminiscing with Rory, I mentioned that I liked the makeup on her because it looked like veins. But then they
Yeah.
also did something to her mouth. They made it look darker, so it was
Yeah,
another visual clue.
It changes throughout that scene. Like she becomes more human and less human color-wise and other things. And it was supposed to look fake, but nothing. I felt all the makeup itself was pretty seamless.
Mhm.
And the way their
yeah.
eyes were so glassy, it
Yeah.
really worked.
Yeah, but for me, I did not like the makeup. It was just a choice of it. Just something about it did not seem real to me. It seemed these people are in makeup. It's not like part of their body. It's on their body.
It reminded me a lot of the Borg Queen from First Contact, like that smooth, smoothing out all the face and then making the eyes super glossy. Even like the wetness, like the translucency of the skin was very Borg Queen. Which, while Jennifer's running around, like that was what I was thinking.
It's funny when the gangers get the acid suits. To me, that's going, oh, that's an actor in a mask in a mask.
Yeah.
So, the Rebel Flesh, who is this episode good for? Or more specifically, this episode is good for who? A new viewer, a casual viewer, a fan of the show, or a diehard?
I think this is good for a new viewer. Even though it's got a cliffhanger ending, I think it's well acted. It's well made. All the levels. It's a good story. And even though there's some obvious foreshadowing, you don't know exactly what it's going to be. And I think the cliffhanger ending makes you curious enough to keep watching. So I think it's actually would entice a new viewer to watch more.
This is hard because I really enjoyed this episode, but when I saw that this was the next episode we were going to do, I had a negative reaction and I didn't want to watch it. And I don't remember what happens next, but it makes me think that the next 2 episodes aren't that good. I don't know, but I did enjoy this episode, so I don't know. I'm really undecided. So maybe I'll just say casual. Like if you're casually watching through the season, this is an episode for you. Like this episode is written for you, the person who's watching the season.
I think I'm going to agree with Kelsey on casual. I also enjoyed the episode and don't have memories of it, good or bad either way. But I think because it is a mid-season and it is rolling into some continuing parters I think it is more appropriate for a casual fan. Like I would recommend a casual fan take another look at this episode just because it is more fun than I remember. While it is good, it doesn't have some of like the Doctor Who staples that I think I'd want to have in a first episode.
It's not a very fun Doctor episode.
Yeah, it feels like those spotlight episodes that take time for the tertiary characters, where this one is like Rory's time.
Mm-hmm. Like Blink is an episode that doesn't have a lot of the Doctor, right? But that's one that's good, really good.
I'm gonna say you have to be a fan of the show to watch this. I don't like this episode. I don't like these 2 episodes. Something seems off to me from the very start to the very end. I can't say what it is. It's just off. In any other episode, the TARDIS having music playing would be funny. This one just seems odd, and to me the show just, I don't know, I'm actually like, ugh. when this episode is over. But there was a reason why I hadn't seen this episode since it first aired, because I don't want to watch it. So, man.
There's an episode, Star Trek Voyager called Tuvix. And basically, it was 2 crew members are on a planet that get beamed up and an accident happens and they merge to be a new person. There's only one person. And that one person has his own personality and traits and kind of memories of the other 2 characters. And they don't know how to separate them. And after months, they figure out how to separate him. And they have a whole moral dilemma going, do we get rid of this new character, Tuvix, and bring back the other 2? Do they have the right to live? Or is Tuvix now an individual who has his own right to live? And by killing him is the only way they can get back those 2 people. And so they have a whole big moral question, what's right? And I thought they addressed it and focused on it really well. In this episode, the moral question is there, but it isn't really asked or addressed. There's no talk or debate about it. It all just turns instantly to them and us and fighting for it, not do these people have a right to live or not, which was, I think, the point of what they're trying to get to, but they never actually get to it. On other episodes, Waters, Mars, Impossible Planet, even Midnight, we get to know those characters so much more deeply and quickly that I want to know what they're thinking or how it is going to affect them. And even tonight, when we're talking about this, we're mixing up Jimmy and Buzzer and Dickon, and it's like, we don't know who they are because they're just such flat characters. They don't really have depth. I think it had a good base story, but I'm more character and story driven, and this just didn't play those out well. So I'm going to go with fan. I want to say one more thing. Watching this the first time, I didn't understand why they did this episode. The story just seemed odd. But now I realize the reason for this episode is to explain something further down the line. So we have knowledge of something.
The only reason it exists.
And that's, I think that's what I resented. Is like, that's the reason they're doing this episode. And they didn't focus on it being its own individual good episode.
I remember as a new viewer watching this, I didn't care for it. But rewatching it now, I found a lot of stuff enjoyable out of it that I was like, what happened during that first watch for me? I enjoy the moral dilemma that's brought up, and then now understanding why they kept that CG shot of Gang or Jen popping through the bathroom door. Now I understand why that's there, where before I was like, that's horrible. But yeah, like Frank, you mentioned, I wish that they would have fleshed out more of the moral dilemma, pun intended. I think that should have been the focus.
They almost flesh it out?
They almost did. I wish that they had. Because I like movies that do that with artificial life and how, like, what is the moral obligation? Is this thing alive? Is it not? What do we do? How do we recognize it? But yeah, for some reason on this rewatch, I enjoyed this more than I thought I would have. So I'm going to have to put it in casual just because of that, because it doesn't belong in new at all for me. So that wraps up The Rebel Flesh. Stay safe, everyone. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time when the future becomes the present.
You've just listened to an episode of Who Knew?
Our wonderful theme music is by Michael Grady.
Find him on Facebook at The Universe Explodes.
All our episodes are engineered by Auburn.
You can find him at auburnbinkley.com.
You can also find this show in several places.
Follow us on Twitter at Who Knew Podcast.
Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher.
Or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/whoknewpodcast.
All our episodes are on whoknewpodcast.com.
Visit our Facebook page.
Please leave comments, reviews, and click like to help support Who Knew Podcast.
To listen to our show on your Amazon Echo device, enable the AnyPod podcast skill. Ask AnyPod to play the Who Knew Podcast.
This podcast is inspired by Doctor Who,
the longest-running sci-fi show in history.
And especially the revival, spearheaded by Russell T. Davis.
Thanks to Russell,
Sidney Newman,
Verity Lambert,
Ron Grainer,
Delia Derbyshire,
and all those involved in the adventures of our favorite Time Lord.
Your work continues to inspire and entertain.
You okay, Josh?
Yeah. I don't think my snowball mic had been on that whole time.
Oh no.
I was gonna actually take this downstairs, so I unplugged it earlier and forgot to plug it back in.
Now you
do sound different.
Yeah, it doesn't sound better.
It's up to you.
That's probably
Hey, let's all start over and do it with
let's
this
just
mic.
start the whole show over.
This is Auburn.
Nice.